For most of the world, Afghanistan remains trapped in a single image: bombed-out cities, dusty roads, and endless war. People still imagine the country as a land frozen in tragedy, where dreams vanish as quickly as gunfire echoes through the mountains. It's a picture painted by decades of conflict, invasion, and political collapse. But what if that picture is no longer accurate? What if, quietly and against all odds, Afghanistan is being rebuilt, not by foreign powers or international aid agencies, but by Afghans themselves? That's what's happening right now. Beneath the world's radar, a transformation is underway that no one predicted. The same Taliban once known for destruction are now leading an era of construction. Across deserts, valleys, and mountain passes, bulldozers roar where bombs once fell. Massive canals carve new paths through dry earth. Roads stretch across provinces once cut off by war. Dams rise where craters once stood. It's not just infrastructure, it's identity being rebuilt from the ground up. This is not the Afghanistan the world thinks it knows. For decades, the country was treated as a cautionary tale, a failed state, a battlefield, a humanitarian crisis. But something far more complex is unfolding today. A quiet revolution driven by self-reliance. The Taliban call it independence through construction. And whether the world agrees with their ideology or not, one thing is clear: they are reshaping the map, the economy, and perhaps even the meaning of sovereignty in Central Asia. For over 40 years, Afghanistan's story was written in the language of war. From the Soviet invasion in 1979, through civil conflict, to the US-led occupation and the chaotic withdrawal in 2021, each chapter seemed more devastating than the last. Entire generations grew up knowing nothing but instability. But when the Taliban returned to power in 2021, something unexpected happened. Instead of governing only through fear, they began talking about development, infrastructure, and economic freedom. Many laughed at the idea. How could a government cut off from global banks, strangled by sanctions and isolated diplomatically, possibly build anything of scale? Yet within 2 years, Afghanistan began to look different. In provinces long forgotten by the world, heavy machines rolled across empty land. Workers, not soldiers, filled the horizons. Projects that had stalled for decades came alive again. The nation that once depended on international donations was now pouring its own limited money into megaprojects. The Taliban called it nation-building without permission. And leading that transformation stands a project so grand, it's already changing the landscape: the Kosh Tepa Canal. The Kosh Tepa Canal isn't just another piece of infrastructure. It's a 285-kilometer-long man-made river cutting across the northern desert, designed to divert 20% of the Amu Darya River, Central Asia's great water artery, into Afghanistan's barren provinces of Balkh, Jowzjan, and Faryab. To grasp its magnitude, imagine California's aqueduct multiplied and stretched through dry sand. The canal is wide enough to support irrigation on a scale never before seen in the country. When completed, it will bring life to 550,000 hectares of farmland, over 1.3 million acres. That's nearly the entire size of the U.S. state of Delaware, turned from dust into green. For decades, Afghan farmers watched rivers flow north into Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, while their own land stayed dry. The Taliban say that time is over. They claim the canal will expand Afghanistan's arable land by a third, making the nation food secure for the first time in modern history. The project costs about $684 million, with an additional $100 million drawn directly from the Taliban's domestic revenue, money earned not from aid, but from taxes, customs, and mining. Over 6,000 Afghan workers are toiling day and night in the searing desert heat, carving the canal through what was once lifeless sand. Drone footage released in 2024 showed shimmering blue water filling vast trenches where only dunes once existed. But with ambition comes conflict. The Amu Darya doesn't belong to Afghanistan alone. It's shared by Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, all dependent on its flow to irrigate their cotton and wheat fields. As water begins to divert south, those countries have grown uneasy. Uzbekistan, in particular, fears that its farmlands could dry up. But the Taliban have stood firm. "The water belongs to Afghanistan," their spokesperson declared. "For decades others drank while our people went thirsty." That statement, simple but defiant, captures the essence of the new Afghan mindset, one centered on reclaiming resources once controlled or exploited by others. To them, the Kosh Tepa Canal isn't merely a project, it's a symbol of sovereignty. And that symbolism extends beyond water. Afghanistan has always been a land of rivers, mountains, and untapped potential. Its nickname, the Roof of Asia, comes from the towering peaks where rivers like the Helmand, the Hari, and the Kabul begin their journey. Yet for generations, Afghanistan used less than a third of its water resources. Now, the Taliban are determined to change that. From one end of the country to another, dam construction has become a national mission. Take the Bakshabad Dam in Farah province. This project, abandoned during the previous government, is now being revived. Once complete, it will irrigate over 100,000 hectares of farmland and generate 27 megawatts of power, a crucial boost for a region often plunged into darkness. In Herat, Kandahar, and Helmand, smaller dams are also being built to combat drought and support agriculture. But these projects are not just about farming, they are about power, in every sense of the word. The Helmand River, for instance, flows into Iran, feeding agriculture in the arid Sistan region. In 2023, when the Taliban restricted its flow to conserve water for Afghan farmers, Iran protested bitterly and even sent troops toward the border. Yet, once again, Afghanistan refused to yield. "We are protecting our water," officials said, "because no one else will." That moment sent a message across the region. The Taliban, once seen as pawns, are now setting their own terms. Just as Egypt and Ethiopia have fought over the Nile, Afghanistan is asserting its control over rivers long taken for granted by others. For a country that spent decades under foreign command, this shift is profound. It's a move from dependency to self-determination, from being the world's pawn to being a player in its own right. And remarkably, it's happening with limited funds. Under the US-backed governments that ruled before 2021, billions of dollars in aid poured into Afghanistan, and billions disappeared. Ghost schools, ghost clinics, ghost highways. Money spent, but nothing built. Today, despite sanctions and isolation, projects are visible, measurable, and real. Local contractors say payments are faster, corruption is lower, and bureaucracy almost non-existent. The Taliban may be brutal in ideology, but in administration, they're proving unexpectedly disciplined. None of this excuses the regime's human rights record. Women are still barred from universities and public offices. Press freedoms are restricted. Dissent is dangerous. But in the realm of infrastructure, the contrast with past governments is striking. The Taliban are not begging for grants. They are building from their own pockets. Every road, dam, and bridge serves both development and control. Development for the people, control for the state. And nowhere is that ambition more visible than just outside Kabul, where a futuristic dream is slowly taking shape. It's called Kabul New City, a 722 square kilometer master plan that could redefine the Afghan capital. Imagine a city nearly the size of New York, designed with wide boulevards, green parks, modern housing, and commercial hubs. Phase 1 alone includes 250,000 residential units, universities, hospitals, shopping centers, and government offices. One of its flagship districts, the Golden City, is planned to host 42,000 homes, while another area known as Parcel 2.6 has already attracted over $700 million in domestic and diaspora investment. For a nation still recovering from decades of rubble, such numbers sound almost unbelievable. Yet construction is visible. Cranes tower over dusty plains. Roads are being laid. Foundations are rising. The Taliban say the project will unfold in two 15-year phases, a 30-year vision to relocate millions from overcrowded old Kabul, where narrow alleys and broken infrastructure can no longer sustain the population. It's an audacious attempt to build a new heart for the country, one planned rather than improvised, one modern rather than medieval. This new city represents more than urban planning. It's psychological, an effort to replace the imagery of destruction with one of progress. The Taliban want to prove they can rule not through terror, but through tangible results. They want to shift Afghanistan's global narrative from chaos to construction. Whether or not the world believes them, Afghans themselves are beginning to feel the difference. For the first time in years, hope, cautious but real, is returning. And that hope is spreading beyond Kabul. Across Afghanistan, the once cursed geography that doomed it to invasion is now becoming its greatest strength. The country sits at the crossroads of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East, the natural bridge connecting the world's largest emerging markets. For centuries, that position made Afghanistan a prize for empires. Today, it could make it a hub for trade. In 2025, a historic agreement changed everything. China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan formally decided to extend the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, known as CPC, directly through Afghan territory. This $60 billion network of roads, railways, and pipelines was originally designed to connect western China to Pakistan's Gwadar port. Now, it's being rerouted to include Afghanistan as a central transit corridor. For the Taliban, this is more than infrastructure. It's integration into Asia's economic bloodstream. Chinese goods will soon flow through Afghan highways toward Central Asia, and Afghan minerals and agricultural products will find new paths to the sea. At the same time, another colossal project is taking shape, the Trans-Afghan Railway. Worth $4.8 billion, this 573-kilometer line will link Uzbekistan's Termez to Pakistan's Peshawar through Afghan territory. It will slice through mountains and deserts with over 300 bridges and 5 tunnels, cutting transport times from 35 days to just 4. When complete, it will connect Central Asia's landlocked economies to seaports for the first time in history. Add to that the Herat-Iran Railway, which now links Afghanistan directly to Iranian ports on the Persian Gulf, and a pattern emerges. Afghanistan is no longer a dead end, it's becoming the heart of Asia's trade grid. For the first time in living memory, Afghans are beginning to see roads not as escape routes, but as lifelines. Every rail track, every canal, every new building whispers the same message. We are still here, and we are rebuilding. And this is only the beginning. What comes next? The pipelines, the power corridors, the mines, and the hidden wealth beneath the soil will reveal just how far Afghanistan's new ambition truly reaches. If the first half of Afghanistan's transformation is about reclaiming land and rebuilding its face, the second half is about what lies beneath: energy, minerals, and power. Beneath those jagged mountains and dry plains are resources that could change the country's future forever. Afghanistan is no longer just talking about survival, it's trying to build a self-sustaining economy that could make it a regional powerhouse. At the center of this next phase stands the long-delayed, now-revived TAPI pipeline, short for Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India. Stretching nearly 1,800 kilometers, this massive pipeline will carry 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas every year from Turkmenistan's enormous Gokinish field to energy-hungry South Asia. The project was once a fantasy, frozen by decades of conflict. But in late 2024, the Taliban stunned the world by announcing that construction on Afghanistan's section had resumed. If completed, TAPI could earn Afghanistan up to $1 billion annually in transit fees, a fortune for a country where total national revenue barely surpasses $5 billion. But beyond the money, it's a matter of pride. The Taliban were part of the original negotiations for TAPI back in 1998 during their first rule. Then war erased it. 25 years later, they're picking up exactly where they left off, almost as if time has looped back. Only this time, they're the ones in control. And that's not the only energy revolution happening. The CASA 1000 project, valued at $1.2 billion, is another vital connection. It's designed to transmit over 1,300 megawatts of clean hydropower from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan through Afghanistan into Pakistan, with 300 megawatts reserved for Afghan use. Even though the Taliban government isn't officially recognized, the project is moving forward thanks to a clever workaround by international partners, funding the engineering and infrastructure indirectly while avoiding direct political engagement. The reason is simple: Afghanistan's geography is too strategic to ignore. Electricity and gas can't reach their destinations without crossing Afghan soil. In this way, the Taliban have turned geography into leverage. But the most dramatic potential lies underground. According to U.S. Geological Survey estimates, Afghanistan's untapped mineral wealth could be worth over $3 trillion. The list reads like the raw material wish list of the 21st century: copper, iron, gold, bauxite, uranium, and most importantly, lithium, the mineral that powers electric vehicles and renewable energy storage systems. In a world transitioning toward clean energy, lithium is the new oil, and Afghanistan could become one of the largest suppliers if it develops even a fraction of its reserves. The Taliban understand the stakes. In 2024, Chinese state-owned companies resumed operations at the Mes Ainak copper mine in Logar province, one of the world's largest untapped deposits. The site had been abandoned for over a decade due to insecurity and corruption. Now, under Taliban protection, Chinese engineers are back on site, drilling, surveying, and promising to invest billions. The Taliban, in turn, have pledged safety, stability, and fair profit sharing. It's a deal that benefits both sides. China gains a foothold in Afghanistan's vast resource base, and the Taliban gain legitimacy through visible progress. Mining has already become the backbone of the Taliban's domestic revenue. Independent reports estimate that in 2022 alone, the regime earned over $1.5 billion from mining royalties and taxes, more than double what previous governments collected. Those funds are being reinvested directly into construction, roads, bridges, hospitals, and canals. One emblematic example is the renovation of the Salong Tunnel, a Soviet-era engineering marvel that links Kabul with the northern provinces through the Hindu Kush. Long infamous for deadly accidents and decay, it's now being rebuilt by Afghan engineers at a cost of over $100 million. For a government operating under sanctions, that's an extraordinary financial commitment, a symbolic act of national pride. But despite these visible successes, Afghanistan's rebirth is far from easy. The country remains cut off from global banking systems. Around $7 billion of Afghan foreign reserves remain frozen abroad. International sanctions restrict trade, finance, and even humanitarian operations. No major country officially recognizes the Taliban government. Within, the economy faces severe inflation, unemployment, and shortages of key goods. And perhaps most painful of all, women remain banned from universities and public employment, a policy that alienates half the population and keeps global institutions at arm's length. Humanitarian groups warn that while construction rises, poverty deepens. Food insecurity affects millions, and many families still depend on international aid to survive. The Taliban's leaders argue that their projects are meant to break this dependency forever. "We will not beg," said one spokesperson. "Our rivers, our minerals, and our land are enough." That defiant confidence has become the regime's new currency. Security remains fragile, too. While the Taliban have restored a degree of order to the streets, the ISIS-K militant group continues to launch attacks, targeting embassies, mosques, and infrastructure. These strikes threaten the very progress the Taliban showcase to the world. Yet, remarkably, work rarely stops. Construction zones often resume within days of an attack, a show of resilience that reinforces the Taliban's narrative: we are here to build, not to flee. Zooming out, the bigger picture is staggering. From east to west, Afghanistan now sits at the convergence of massive global projects. To the east lies China's Belt and Road Initiative. To the west, Iran's Chabahar port expands under Indian investment. To the north, Russia pushes its Eurasian Economic Union deeper into Central Asia. All these corridors, pipelines, railways, and fiber optic routes intersect on Afghan land. Whether or not the world acknowledges it, Afghanistan has become a keystone of Asia's infrastructure map. Control of its terrain means control of trade. For the Taliban, this new centrality offers something no previous government managed: bargaining power. China needs stability for its investments. Pakistan needs Afghanistan's cooperation to protect CPC. Central Asian states need secure trade corridors to reach southern ports. Even Iran, once a bitter rival, depends on Afghan cooperation for cross-border commerce and water sharing. Each of these relationships gives Kabul leverage, something it never had before. While the West isolates the Taliban, Asia is learning to work with them quietly. It's a kind of unofficial recognition, driven not by ideology but by necessity. This shift marks a new chapter not just for Afghanistan, but for the entire region. For decades, foreign powers treated the country as a chessboard. Today, the Taliban are flipping that board. They're turning their landlocked position into strength, their isolation into strategy. It's a model of governance through self-reliance, born not from wealth but from scarcity. By refusing to depend on aid, they've forced the world to acknowledge Afghanistan as more than a charity case. It's now an unavoidable partner in the future of Asian trade. But can this model last? That's the question experts are debating. Economic growth can't survive without inclusion, and no nation has ever prospered while excluding half its workforce. Women's education and participation remain off-limits, and that's a massive constraint on innovation and sustainability. Afghanistan's new projects may generate pride, but without social balance, progress could stagnate. A road may connect two cities, but it cannot bridge the gap between ideology and modernization. This inner contradiction, between faith and progress, control and openness, defines the new Afghanistan more than any blueprint. Despite these challenges, the country feels different. In Kabul, the hum of construction has replaced the sound of conflict. In Herat, traders once afraid to invest now export stone, saffron, and carpets. In Mazar-e-Sharif, markets buzz with goods arriving by new rail lines from Uzbekistan. Farmers in the north are preparing to plant on newly irrigated soil from the Kosh Tepa Canal. And in villages across the country, solar panels glitter on rooftops, small signs of modernization in a land that was once synonymous with darkness. These are not isolated stories. Together, they form a new narrative, a country trying to rebuild itself on its own terms. The Taliban's approach may be rigid and authoritarian, but it's producing tangible results. Their government is betting that visible progress, dams, bridges, electricity, will eventually outweigh the world's political disapproval. Recognition, as one Afghan analyst put it, may come later, but roads come first. For Afghans who've lived through generations of war, even limited stability feels revolutionary. A laborer building the new Salong tunnel may not agree with every policy, but he knows his children will travel safer roads than he did. A farmer seeing water reach his fields for the first time in decades doesn't care about sanctions. He cares that his land is alive again. These personal victories, multiplied across millions, are what sustain this transformation. Of course, Afghanistan's reconstruction is still fragile. A drought could cripple the canal system. A single political misstep could push foreign investors away. But for now, the momentum is undeniable. The Taliban's focus on self-funded development is forcing the world to reconsider its assumptions about what's possible under isolation. Even nations once deeply skeptical of the regime are quietly observing, calculating, and adjusting their policies. As the sun sets over the Kosh Tepa Canal, its waters reflecting the red Afghan sky, the message becomes clear. Afghanistan's story is no longer just about war. It's about resilience. It's about a people who, after decades of foreign interference, decided to build without permission. The Taliban's version of Afghanistan may be controversial, even oppressive, but it's real, and it's changing the landscape faster than anyone expected. The world can debate ideology, but it cannot deny progress. From the revived tunnels of Salong to the rising skyline of Kabul New City, from the roaring turbines of Bakshabad Dam to the long metallic veins of the Tapi pipeline, a new Afghanistan is taking shape, one defined not by bombs, but by blueprints. And maybe that's the deeper lesson in all of this, that power isn't always declared on podiums or won through wars. Sometimes it's built quietly, in the heat of the desert, by people who refuse to surrender to history. So, whether you see the Taliban as rulers or rebels, one fact stands undeniable: Afghanistan is rebuilding, and the world will soon have to deal with what it has become. The land once called the graveyard of empires is now the workshop of a new regional order. This is the new face of Afghanistan, scarred, complicated, but undeniably determined. And as always, if you found this story eye-opening, share and subscribe, because sometimes the most powerful revolutions happen where the world least expects them.